Amazing. Thank you, Pauliina. Welcome, everybody, on my behalf as well. Why we decided to bring you together? I have to say I have been, I try to use my words conservatively because my colleagues keep telling me that I can be a woman of a lot of big ideas and big words. But this time I honestly have to say that some things that have been developing in the past 3 to 6 months I did not see coming. And a couple of months ago when we decided to host this event, we decided that we're going to also show you a little bit of stuff that's not yet public, that's not yet, it's actually in production, as you can see very soon. My co-founder will show you the renewed Upright AI engine for sustainability intelligence, or parts of it. We'll be officially launching it mid-June, but we wanted to share with you and maybe test a little bit with you also what that means concretely. And what's changing? There are two grand developments right now around us at the intersection of which we as Upright are working and in which you are working as well together with us. And also, of course, without us, which is the first development has to do with the field of sustainability. We've all seen the ups and downs in the past decade. We've seen regulators start to be really enthusiastic about stuff, maybe drive some of it down, pedaling back and forth. We've seen the macroeconomic environment. We're not going to use more time on that, on all the crazy things that are happening. We've seen the sort of market maybe become slightly polarized. I don't know if that's a too strong word, but definitely there are certain political parties and geographical areas where some of the steps have been sort of taken back in sustainability, while other, especially many European LPs, are putting even more stronger conviction on sustainability than ever before. What I find interesting, though, is not so much of these sort of political ups and downs. What I find interesting is the sort of train that keeps moving no matter what. And that is that whether an investor believes in science or climate change or any of the other sort of real phenomena around us, every single investor is either indirectly or directly impacted by the real changes to, let's say, value change, demand and cost driven by demand and cost changes driven by whether it's climate change, nature loss, societal issues. So in the end of the day, it's really a choice to either take this data that's available into account or not, and then it's in the end of the day, it's the intellectual decision is there. And I know what you've chosen, so maybe not more about that here. But the one change is in sustainability, where a new chapter is about to begin. I have a very strong vision of what that will look like, but let's say that what's sort of fair to say right now is that we're moving from reporting and compliance, any disclosure will do, to utilizing financially material data on risks, impact, risk, and opportunities throughout the investment process. And that's what many of you, if not all of you, work with already on a daily basis. The second shift, and this is something where we hope to really be able to offer you something new today, is then the one around technology and how that really cuts through to sustainability data. As said, I've been a bit of a, well, given that I'm an engineer by background, I run a tech company. Maybe it's a strong word to say that I've been a bit skeptic with AI. And we're not skeptic with AI in general, but at least it's sort of like how it will transform certain very closely defined areas such as sustainability data. Because I've seen many kind of like hypes before on how this and this will change the information that investments are being, like decisions are being made on investments. And I've seen that, yeah, there have been incremental changes, but nothing has really changed the fundamentals of what you need to do what you need to know to make a good investment. This is something where I've changed my opinion in the past 3 to 6 months, just seeing what's actually happening with the large language models. I've also been exchanging some great ideas with my co-founder and Upright CTO. I don't know, where are you? Here. Juho will also take the stage. He was too shy to have his name there up on the screen, but he will also share the stage with me soon and show you a couple of concrete demos. And we've been discussing with Juho about what are really the fundamental technological developments that are changing now, what sustainability data can mean for institutional investors. Not just that data gathering will be slightly more efficient or cleaning up messy data. That's important as well, and that's something we can definitely take care of, but more in terms of how it moves the role of sustainability data for the investor world. I'm provoking here that AI changes everything and nothing. Everything, hopefully I will be able to make that point soon in my speech and the demos, and nothing in terms of still the fundamentals of why sustainability and different topics under the hood term sustainability, why they are material for investing. Nothing in that dynamic has really changed in the past 6 months at least. Good. I will try to go through concretely how AI changes sustainability data, what that means for investors, and then, as promised, give you a sneak peek into what we call here the renewed upright AI engine for sustainability intelligence. We've been building the very model for the past 8 years, but the sort of upgrades that we started to build towards, we realized this is more than just a email to our customers that now you get this on top. This is something bigger, and we should tell you about it. So what changes? First, very maybe a bit of a mundane thing for everybody who's been following what AI changes, which I hope and believe is everybody in the room today. So let's be honest, a majority of the efforts put into ESG and sustainability data among institutional investors in the past 5 years or so have gone in some shape or form in just gathering and getting the data somehow together. It hasn't necessarily been the most exciting part, and sometimes the outcome has left something to be wished for in terms of what's the ROI of that exercise. AI is definitely moving this, and I think that probably needs no explanation. In terms of, I'm not just talking about the basic like disclosure collection and picking them from PDFs. You no longer need manual analysts to do that. I also mean in terms of what kinds of data can be gathered and what's the rigor and the speed of that. But that everybody knows already. The second one is maybe a little bit more nuanced, which is that where the market is moving away from what companies disclose and sort of investor needing to take that as given, more towards what can be found out about a company. And this is where the game gets really interesting, because it's no longer about a company necessarily like managing or controlling the narrative, the sustainability narrative of their own company, but rather about, on the driver's seat are the ones who then use the data, investors, regulators, media, whoever wants to, employees, customers, whoever wants to really X-ray the company through. So thirdly, there's definitely a sort of move from if about 4 years ago probably there was a peak in this kind of yay, let's do net zero and all kinds of like signaling of doing good things. I don't mean to be mean here. There was also a lot of good intention behind all of those projects. It's clear that the market is moving towards the question of what's really financially material and how do you utilize this information in your investment process. And finally, moving from standardized data sets, whether it's gathering those standardized data sets or producing those standardized data sets, to using what we call, can be a bit of a buzz term, but hopefully we can today give you a flavor around that, actual sustainability intelligence that informs better decision making. So what does this mean for investors? Really simply, basic disclosure collection is, I was wondering if I should write has been commoditized already, but maybe there are still some pockets where this is still moving forward. But it's clear, at least in all of our client discussions, that this is no longer enough to gain competitive advantage. Private markets are no longer a black box. This is exciting. This is, I think, what maybe and will be the topic of our second panel today. It's very interesting when you step into a mode where you can, by just simply companies having internet presence, so all of these models having access to what they do, granular information about their products, their geographical locations, their value chains, their customers, and so on, and being able to analyze a whole wealth of things that was never even really dreamt of when we lived in a world where it was just like an Excel questionnaire sent to the poor CEOs of the privately held companies or their teams. Thirdly, and I think this is really interesting in terms of the company. So we also work with corporates directly, in addition to you on the finance sector, and this is really interesting. So the role of companies in this play is significantly changing. So instead of companies being the ones who disclose and give out metrics on themselves, in a way rating themselves, their role becomes more clear in disclosing the raw data that in the end of the day dictates these impacts, whether it's very granular information about the products and services that then form their revenue, whether it's about locations, value chains, but it's less about doing that math internally and giving them a number that's hard to compare to another number, and more about making this available. And then the math can be run elsewhere, typically and preferably by a machine, so that you can actually use comparable assumptions, comparable input data for different companies. This is a really good thing for both parties. Investors get a lot more high quality data. Companies, to be honest, they haven't loved the challenge to let's say, come up in a cumbersome way how to then calculate some of these metrics for themselves, or how to decide what to take into scope 3. And to be honest, I don't think they should be the ones making that decision. It should be the user of the data that decides what they use. And finally, a little bit linked to the first point, investors will be expected to utilize, not just report on something and tick the box, but really utilize throughout the investment process sustainability data that is financially material. Okay, so AI will change a lot. All of this sounds somewhat, I guess, good news in terms of, well, a bit more pressure, a bit more tougher game, but at least like more availability. So what needs to be done? Do we just then ChatGPT our way through this? How many of you use some sort of a general LLM in your work? Yeah, if I'm not wrong, I saw everybody's hand go up. How many of you have asked some questions about sustainability from an LLM, general purpose LLM? Yeah, good. Excellent. So, and this is very interesting. This is maybe one of the parts where we hope we can also offer you some insights to what it means to build a vertically trained model in this space. So I guess it's a part of the larger AI transformation. There are these amazing general purpose LLMs that all of us are using on a daily basis. And then there's the sort of race to find winning solutions in verticals that are then extremely good at one vertical, whether it's in, health and finance and all of these things. One small niche here is then ours, what we do on a daily basis, which is then the sustainability quantification, quantitative analysis around impacts, risk, and opportunities of companies and investments. This is really has been a big part of our work to also sort of explain and position ourselves. But very shortly, and this is actually my co-founder has made a really interesting paper on this. I'm happy to send it if any of you are looking for some reason, maybe in your own investment activities otherwise into these kind of like vertically trained models. But in the very sort of particular task of sustainability quantification, the general LLMs have a couple of really fundamental problems. What I typically like to sort of start with when discussing this with clients is the fact about lack of sort of mathematical coherence. So as Juha writes here, if you ask an LLM to compare A versus B, and then let's say that A is bigger than B and B is bigger than C, and then you ask what's the relation between A and C, you can get really funny answers. If 3 of your colleagues ask the same question, or if you ask yourself on different days, you can get answers that are lacking mathematical coherence. And it's very understandable given how LLMs work. I'm not saying the general purpose LLMs are not groundbreaking, they definitely are, but for tasks like this, they are not built. There's of course also the challenge of being sort of trained on the general corpora, so kind of like the internet truth, versus then models like Upright that are being built on scientific consensus and really post-trained to provide answers grounded on science. In this table, we try to summarize the sort of reason or the difference between general purpose LLMs and the Upright LLM very concretely in terms of key areas. One thing that I haven't yet mentioned is then the repeatability and verifiability. Many of our clients are working with data they need to audit, they need to know where it came from, and they need to know that they're getting the same answer for the same question. And this is also a big part of why vertically trained models are needed. What we now call this in a fancy way, we say that our LLM is now a vertically trained model purpose-built specifically for sizing the magnitude of real-world impacts, risk, and opportunities. What's been interesting to find is that we haven't found a single model that would be right now doing the same, which is also one of the reasons why we are really pushing on the pedal and wanting to make sure that you as our our users of this data as our partners are getting the best of this model. Not just the data sets you're getting today, but that you're really getting access to this engine. So what is the engine about? I'm going to start with sort of some of the basics. I think we've sort of met with all of your organizations before, but maybe just taking a couple of steps back of what Upright is really about. We started this company 8.5 years ago, and with the simple idea that we couldn't find a solution in the market that would do mathematically robust quantification of externalities, in a way. That's one way to put it. We started to call it net impact because externalities was a word that many people found to be a bit distant. But basically what we started to do is to quantify and size the magnitude of different positive and negative impacts that companies have on the surrounding world, and slightly after that started to also look at the equation the other way around. So how does then the world around the company really impact its ability to financially perform well? So what Upright has been about is, I call it here, science-based impact, risk, and opportunity quantification. That's our niche. That's what we have been concentrating on. One central thing is that we haven't been limited to what companies report. That's why many of you have used us for to access information about assets that don't have any available disclosures, and also to access areas of impact that you can't otherwise get from the company report. So even if you have a sort of publicly listed asset that does a lot of sustainability reporting, you wouldn't find, let's say, if you wanted to know what's the number of disability adjusted life years that are caused by Philip Morris products through lung cancer, you wouldn't find that in the Philip Morris report. Actually, you wouldn't find a single mention of lung cancer in the Philip Morris sustainability report, which I find a funny anecdote. Comparability has been our bread and butter. So one of the things that I found it the most sort of mathematically astonishing in the wonderful world of ESG data when I entered this almost a decade ago was that you could be looking at 3 companies, even in the same industry, looking at the same metric, but still have completely different assumptions, like behind their scope 3 disclosures, for example. You could even be looking at the same company from year to year and have that same discrepancy. So you really couldn't have comparability even to talk of. And we thought that what would happen if we were to make the exact same assumptions, even if they're wrong. Let's make the exact same assumptions for every company and see where we can land. So if science doesn't know something, let's at least have the same playing ground for every company and then upgrade them at the same pace for every release of the model. That's how Upright came to be, and this comparability and aggregation has been a big part of what we do, especially towards investors who obviously face this problem. We also measure the positives. That's been something that probably Upright is known for. That's where the net impact, the idea of both the negatives and positive come from, and we cover the private markets. Because of how our methodology is built up, there's been no restriction in that. What we haven't been in the market for, the space we leave for others, so to say, haven't been a reporting platform. We haven't covered many of the sort of how a company does what it does, more typical ESG questions with which many of our customers have used other data sources for, and we haven't done carbon accounting. This was probably the biggest misunderstanding in the beginning, in the first 800 times I talked about the company. Cool. So this has been what we started to do, and in many respects, this continues to be our scope. But what's been difficult for us? I thought I would throw in a little bit of sort of under the hood vulnerability in terms of what have we struggled with. So I say here before AI, that's a bit of an inaccurate term. So I mean before the accelerated progress of large language models in the past 6 to 12 months. So 3 things that especially were difficult for us. So these are things we've been banging our heads against the wall in the Upright office, things we wanted to do better for you, but we technically quite not yet couldn't. Or we could, but it was manually too sort of a little bit slow and not that impressive. First thing, hard to integrate with other works. So we many times work with you of, hey, but what if we love the holistic approach of Upright, we get all the data points, we get all the coverage, but hey, what if we have this one expert that's been in the house for 17 years, who's really into this part of marine biology, who knows everything about this one asset? This has been something we haven't had a sort of ready button on. How do you then put and override this information for this one particular category where you have more specific information in the Upright model. The second has been, hey, we love the Upright model, but we don't want to be talking about meaning and joy to our LPs, or we don't want to look at jobs and taxes, they're not a part of our, or we don't want to, for whatever reason, consider health for this analysis. It's of course technically been possible if you use us through through API, but it's still been a little bit sort of slow and difficult. And finally, and I think this has been the sort of biggest thing that I've been sort of frustrated with, because we built the model that can essentially model any asset in very sort of short time frame, but we haven't had a proper way to like allow you to use it, which is, hey, we want to run a DD or maybe a fast screening before IC. We don't even want to share anyone. We don't even want to email maybe one of the colleagues and then wait for them to come back. We'd just love to like really access the model in real time. And this is something that we now started to tackle. Before I show you concretely the changes in the renewed Upright engine, what has made this possible? Very shortly, and again, if you're interested in this, I really recommend having a chat with my co-founder, Juho. It sounds like I'm getting paid to kind of like advertise you, or he's not billing for the time, so you can just talk with him for free. But anyways, first thing that I thought this might be interesting for you for other sort of applications as well, other companies that you're working with. The fact that software integration problems have virtually almost disappeared is really mind-blowing for me. So many companies have made a complete business out of these problems. Like, how do you, for example, like integrate your investment management system to Upright? These are problems that no longer, to some extent, exist, as long as we have Juho will show you very shortly how we've built an MCP to all of the relevant LLMs you might be working with. Secondly, and this is huge for product development, not just for us, but for basically any company building any kind of a solution like this. You no longer have to have the pain of kind of like guessing what users might need in your user interface and in your how you're setting up the data. But you can simply just allow the user to use the engine and ask whatever they want through an agentic UI. We'll show that as well. And finally, the LLM performance improvements, you cannot really undermine how much they. I cannot emphasize enough how much of a difference they've made in terms of how fast we can retrieve, let's say, product information for a private asset by just using a URL. Where this leaves us, basically four concrete expansions. The first one, and I wrote them here very, very concretely so that they're not like huffy fluffy AI talk. First one, that Upright is now able to take in documents. Like an everyday thing, but it's rather mind-blowing, because it means that you can integrate it into your other work. So whether you are, let's say, running a DD, you can basically upload your own investment memo, what your team has been working on. You can upload if you've done a big deep dive on that one biodiversity impact. You can upload any reports or any sort of data you may have of the company and just integrate it to ask, like, based on this 100-day plan and what Upright says, what are the biggest discrepancies, or what should the team be focusing on? That's number one. Secondly, you are no longer sort of restricted by the different data sets that we have. Many of you know we've been providing net impact data around the UN SDGs, working with SFDR, the EU taxonomy, and principal adverse impact indicators. Double materiality has been a big thing for us. Financial effects, as well as climate risk. No longer you need to sort of restrict yourself between these data sets, but you can rather just simply ask questions like, hey, according to Upright, this is let's say I'm going to talk to the management team or the board of the company. This is their ESG plan. According to Upright, what are they missing? What are the 3 biggest financially material things that are going to impact them in the next 3, 7, 10, whatever year horizon, and what should I challenge them with? The agentic UI enables you basically to use the Upright engine exactly for the use case you need. So we no longer are restricted to, hey, what do you want to compare? How many assets can I put here to compare? How do I want to, run this analysis? To what funds or peers do I want to compare my asset with? You can simply know yourself, and you don't need to even share that with us. And then, depending a little bit on your role and on the sort of type of investor you are, to what kind of a role does ESG due diligence currently have? But at least everybody does some sort of screening and some sort of fast monitoring of different companies. The speed and rigor at which companies can now be analyzed are rather sort of something I didn't see coming when you looked at the sort of typical maybe cumbersome consultant project done around a ESG assessment, and what you can now run based on the Upright engine and our different integrations to Upright. Cool. Does any one of you find this at least slightly interesting? I see some nodding. I know. Okay. Cool. So, as said, the shift that we feel excited about is actually giving you not just data produced by the Upright engine, but access to the Upright engine as of next month. So I promised you some demos. I'm going to wrap it up here, and we're going to move directly. I'm going to give the mic to my co-founder Juho, and we're going to move directly to the first demo. So throughout this event today, in the between of the panels as well, we're going to do 3 concrete demos of what this looks like. The first one is going to be running a sustainability intelligence, just put it in broadly, for a public asset with an agentic UI. The second will then be an example from the private market, so just using a URL and showing what the Upright model can uncover and how you can dive deeper to whatever you want to ask. And thirdly, we're doing a demo where we show how you can upload, because these two first ones are like for an individual company. The third one is then if you want to look at whichever batch of companies you want to be studying, your own portfolio or whatever investable universe you would like to be studying, and identifying how you can, showing how you can identify financially material risks within that group of companies in real time. How does this sound? Excellent. So I would suggest that we would give a huge applause to Juho and set him free for the first demo.